All right, let's dive into today's topic. So, Chris, the reason we asked you to come on here was to talk a little bit more, expand upon one of your most recent videos that you post. I think it's like fourth or fifth down on your page now, about kind of that balance between competition and your career and your life, and people who kind of lose grips on that. What we're going to do is we're going to link the video down below. But Chris, I was curious to ask you what kind of motivated you? What was it that like triggered you there to record that video? Was there a specific event, or it was just something that had been on your mind?
When something starts to become reoccurring constantly with clients, I have to say something to try to change people's perspective. And the thing about balance is everybody has a different idea of what balance is to them, right? But one of the things that I see constantly in bodybuilding is the over complication and obsessiveness of, and even where that takes action that people take that don't equate to any extra results, right? So it's like you're burning your mind out. You're spending your mind obsessing about these things, overthinking things, which if you're overthinking, you're obsessing, you're not living in the moment. You're not paying attention to your quality of life outside of bodybuilding, the gym, nutrition. And you're putting all this effort, mental effort, energy forth that's not going to equate to results, which eventually actually going to make you take a step backwards. And then it just makes you miss so much. I mean, case in point, I think every single bodybuilder has fallen into that at some point or another. I remember going back 2007 to 2009. It's like I lived, eat, breathed bodybuilding every second of my life. And there was just everything I did, everything I thought about. Did that equate to some massive results and gains? No. If anything, I probably didn't make any gains from 2008 to 2009 because you overcomplicate it. You burn out. It's just like you changes your personality. You become too serious. You lose your sense of humor. And then the years that the last year leading back in my last pro show that I did, I made the most gains I've made since Natty, since beginning gains back in 2006 in 6 months. And I was still doing stuff with my wife. I was still going out to eat. I was still partaking in other fun activities outside of bodybuilding. My mind wasn't on bodybuilding all day long. I was able to make gains. I felt great, and I had more balance in my life. And it goes to show that, like, just because your mind is not obsessing about something every day, all day, doesn't mean you're not going to be able to make ground. I just see so many people burn out. They come out, I want to be a professional. I want to do this, whatever it takes. And then 8 months later, crickets. It's just like, I got burnt out. Yeah, man, because you're going full throttle all the time and your wheels are just spinning. It's like you can still be productive in bodybuilding in your life and everything else and still make ground. And then the other aspect is what people think they have to sacrifice to be a better bodybuilder. You don't need to sabotage your relationships. You don't need to sabotage your family. You don't need to quit your job. I've had clients quit their job to try to bodybuild them. It's like you need 2 jobs to bodybuild. And people just lose sight and they become too infatuated with this fitness industry. What people don't understand the fitness industry is you're not going to make shit money from it unless you do something with an expertise, a service. Being awesome, number one, even Olympia stage is not going to pay money for the rest of your life. It's kind of like you're being a star. You're being the star defensive lineman. Like, what's their average expectancy in the NFL? 5, 6 years, 7 years, and their body gets destroyed. So you got to play your cards right and be smart. That's kind of what sparked that.
Dom, I think you and I have talked about this before, where you've quantified, how many hours a day you think it takes to be a high level bodybuilder. Like, how many hours of your day should be consumed by the sport? What was that number that you settled on?
3, 4, maybe.
Yeah.
3, 4 hours a day, pretty much. You need an hour to train, an hour to cook, and then the rest of your day does not need to be consistently, constantly, bodybuilding. Chris and I were talking about this topic a couple weeks ago about like younger kids, like around me, that are really burning out, that they're going like, full throttle, 100%, ending up like with, acute kidney injuries, like, things that are just absurd to hear about at such a young age. And then the aspect of like they do their prep, they're done with prep, and then they just completely hate bodybuilding now because they just spent 2 years every day living, breathing, taking pictures, doing everything constantly just bodybuilding. And now they're behind. They have no serious job. They have no path of schooling if that's what they want to go do. And it's just sad to see at such a young age, seeing that come up. Even like with my younger guys that I coach, like are 18, 19, I always tell them, like, first things first, you got to make sure you could pay for all of this. You got to make sure that you're not going to get yourself to the point where you're going to have to maybe borrow money from your parents, because competing is not cheap, but between an NPC card, a tan, all that stuff. So even with them, I always tell them, like, take your time. The stage is always going to be there. Why not get yourself financially, set and everything consistently coming in as an income and you're comfortable? You could still bodybuild during that entire process, but then that's when you can make a leap to competing, because otherwise you're going to see it ruin your life.
3 hours is exactly the number I had in my mind as soon as you asked that. 3 hours is about what people don't understand is there's other aspects of the day that are important to nutrition that don't take up time, meaning getting your meals in on a consistent basis, going to sleep and getting up on a consistent basis, maybe refraining from like drinking and cocaine and all these other drugs that people are doing in bodybuilding. Like that's also possibly something that you need to take into consideration. And I think one other aspect of, I think young people or actually just any age people going to bodybuilding is there's certain things you do have to sacrifice to be a good bodybuilder. In other words, you can't go on an all weekend hiking trip, only having a couple meals a day. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to go play pickup game basketball 3 times a week and bodybuild. The risk of injury, it's counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve. Gaining muscle is not that easy. So when you're trying to gain muscle, certain things kind of have to be taken a back burner or reduced to a degree. I think that's one thing that people still think they can do. Still bodybuild, eat all your food, go hiking, go on these travel trips, kayaking and basketball and all these recreational activities, which will just inevitably slow you down.
Yeah, it's not a it's not a competition to see who can sacrifice the most pieces of their life, and then that's going to give you the rewards in the end. Like, I divorced my wife and I, left my job, and that's why I'm Mr. Olympia, because I was willing to get rid of all of that, and that's why I'm so great. It's not that extreme. That ain't how it works.
Never happens. And it's funny is after I post that video, I actually had quite a few people reach out. And they say, yeah, I've learned the hard way. I've been divorced. I messed my job up. Or people are like, I messed this up. I messed up in my life. He goes, I'm older now. I regret it. So some people bodybuilding is very consuming, and it will consume you. And it honestly will destroy your life if you let it. So you have to stay grounded. You have to stay rational. And with bodybuilding, I would say with opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. You just got to be real careful on which opinion you listen to and which advice you take, because you're going to get pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah, I think that's a big one too, with how cliquey bodybuilding is. Like the super hardcore. Like, no, Chris is wrong. You have to live, die, breathe. You can't miss a macro. You can't miss a gram for 10 years. Like, there's that crowd. Then there's a crowd that's more. You can enjoy things outside of, bodybuilding still and still be a good bodybuilder. That's just where that constant tug and pull is. And then if you're somebody new coming in between all that, that's when you're going to be getting pulled either way. And I think that's one thing that, like, for people who don't know much yet, that's one thing that you kind of have to look out for. And you kind of have to go in open-minded, because otherwise you might get pulled into the wrong crowd and eventually it might really hurt you.
It's funny is you'll notice too, you always know which mentality of person somebody is based on which group they gravitate to, right? It's like when you see somebody work with this coach, you're like, oh, they just want to take a bunch of drugs. I got it. I got it. You know, or like, oh, they're going over that group. Okay, that's what they identify with. You already know. You know,
Yeah.
and some people are like, oh, does that ever bother you? That, you know, I'm like, no, because those are people actually I don't want to work with, you know?